Zootopia is a film that I hold near and dear to my heart, and with the second movie coming next year, it's returned to my interest. And after quite a few rewatches, I've had a few ideas I would like to share today, specifically on the possible evolution of this society and examining some of the prejudice that might linger in this society. It's established that within the universe of Zootopia, for thousands of years, predator and prey have lived in harmony, and no longer live in fear, and have evolved past the need for outdated social structures.
Yeah, I don't have to cower in a herd anymore. Instead, I can be an astronaut.
We also see in this beginning clip that mammals in this universe did not start as anthropomorphic, rather they evolved into that. This process would have taken multiple millions of years in a time where presumably apes never came to pass. This process would be interesting in a universe like this, because it means that all mammals evolved communally in a similar manner, all reaping the same benefits of evolution of things like thumbs and bipedalism. However, this strain of thinking can be disproved in the Natural History Museum scene at the end of the film, as there can be seen a tribe of rabbits hunting down what appears to be a leopard. This leads my mind to two thoughts. One, prey animals evolved at a point to hunt predators, or two, what I consider more likely, the leveling of the playing field of prey and predator at such an early time may be the reason they can coexist. Evolution is often referred to as an arms race between predator and prey, so I see this as a sort of salt treaty. In my possible evolutionary history, the predators would eventually evolve to bipedalism as well, to counteract this massive advantage it has lent to the prey animals, though there is one important detail. Mammals are the only ones seen to advance in this film. This leads me and many others to come to the conclusion that predatory animals in Zootopia subsist on insects and birds in order to survive. This theory makes sense because of our own evolutionary history and cultures. If somehow all mammals on Earth became bipedal and sentient, with their own distinct yet intercommunicable languages, as well as presumed regional cultures, it makes logical sense that they would develop an ethics system and decide that morally it was reprehensible to consume another highly intelligent animal, leading to the mass consumption of non-intelligent animals, who would not evolve in the same way. Despite this, there would still be arbitrary divisions on lines such as species, class, or being traditionally carnivorous or herbivorous. Just looking at humanity, we are one unified species and still have these arbitrary divisions, sans carnivorous and herbivorous, so it's safe to say that these would exist to a similar or greater extent in the Zootopia universe. This idea was explored in early versions of the film where predators were made to wear shock collars and were feared and segregated from the prey-dominated society, but these divisions will be touched on more in a later segment. There's one more thing to cover here, and that's extinction. In the Natural History Museum, there is seen to be a primal woolly mammoth with a spear, meaning these animals existed at a point, and have to have gone extinct at a point, which in real life could have well been in part due to human hunting. But without such a thing, why would they go extinct? Perhaps, with all mammals being sentient, something like a war or famine destroyed their population, or too much competition with other elephant species, or simply they evolved into modern elephants seen in Zootopia. So what of the mammals that went extinct directly from humans? Is it safe to say that there are quagga and thylacine kicking about? For the fun of it, I posit that sure, these animals can well be around in the world of Zootopia. Another interesting point is that Zootopia was not always there to accommodate mammals of all types. As seen in the Zootopia Plus miniseries, things like Little Rodentia and Tundra Town were very new things, timeline-wise, making one wonder, what did animals do before all this technology? I would submit the idea that before the spread of technology, mammals would have largely stayed within their real-life geographical regions, in their own countries and cities that accommodated their needs. This is not to say that some would not have migrated at their own peril in search of a better life, as mammals would be living in human-esque capitalistic societies. According to Byron Howard, one of the directors of Zootopia, the city of Zootopia is based on many large industrialized cities in real life, which historically are often some of the most diverse places, while other places like Bunnyburrow are seen to contain animals that would traditionally be found there. Another interesting idea is that only 10% of Zootopia is predatory animals. Possible nod to the idea in ecology that only 10% of energy is transferred through trophic levels, meaning that it would take 10 prey to sustain one predator. I think that is interesting to include in Zootopia because it could give a reason for there not being much of a need for meat consumption if there are less predators and thus less farms needed for these animals, hence why there are such large farms for crops, though farms that produce meat are not seen in the film. Additionally, the evolution of these mammals would be to expend less energy in the day-to-day life because they wouldn't be traveling so much and hunting. They would need less food to sustain them. Therefore, I guess it would be more feasible for them to be able to consume less amounts of meat and still be able to function well. Overall, I think it's a cool idea to explore a parallel between human settlement and migration in this hypothetical world of animals. I said we'd come back to it, and here we are. I would be remiss to talk about Zootopia without talking about the prejudice lens of the film, as is one of the main points of contention throughout. I think it's interesting to look at this prejudice from a standpoint of ignorance and evolution. There is more actual reasoning for the prejudice here than in the real world, because here some of the species did historically eat each other, even if it was millions of years ago. Hence, the fear would not have been fully evolved out of them. Even after years of coexistence, the time span of predator and prey living together would not have been long enough for these animals to settle together peacefully fully, hence some of the fear, even if it is misplaced. Another interesting point is that at one point in the film, Judy calls in a mammal gone savage as a legitimate police code.
Clubhouser, listen to me. We have a 1091 Jaguar gone savage.
Meaning that this kind of thing either had documented precedent in the hidden city of Zootopia, or it shows the paranoia of prey that is enshrined into their legal work without precedent. What I'm not saying here is that Zootopia is a parallel to the real-world racism, as this would be nonsensical to compare interspecies struggle in a Disney movie about anthropomorphic animals, where there are legitimate differences between species, and real-world interracial bigotry, which has no basis in legitimate science and is utterly nonsensical and unscientific. It can also be noted that prejudice is not just shown to predators. One large aspect of the film is Judy, a prey mammal, overcoming prejudice and stereotypes. I think that the prejudice in Zootopia stems from a place of genuine difference versus the aesthetic differences of the real world. Looking at the film being about general prejudice and not looking at it as a film on race is what someone should do if they're looking to examine the film critically. If we look at the prejudice shown to Nick, it can be seen as something more societal, based on evolution, though at that point outdated. Nick is not just a sly fox, but he is more than that, as seen later in the film. I think it's an interesting point to look at the fact that there would be lingering hostilities between species even after they had coexisted. These hostilities may only have been more awakened with the events of the film, but had always been simmering. There are clearly also prejudices against smaller mammals, which may lend to an idea that there's some sort of hierarchy in Zootopia, where larger prey mammals are at the top, with small mammals at the bottom, and medium prey and predator in the middle, with the medium prey obviously holding more priority to that society's image than the medium predators. But it can be seen predators are able to hold positions of power, at least larger ones are. Like the mayor is a lion, there's plenty of predators in the police force, but there is clearly prejudice towards them as well. Overall, I think Zootopia is a fun movie to try and examine from an evolutionary standpoint, but there are definitely some inconsistencies that are hard to explain. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see my own take on Zootopia in a future video. This was just a fun exploration of one of my favorite movies right now and not meant to be taken seriously. I hope you enjoyed it and thanks for sticking around this long.